Okay, according to OBS, I am officially live. I don't know why I've put on headphones, because I've got nobody to talk to at the moment, so I'll disable desktop audio in case a rogue, some sort of notification goes off. Been a bit of a scramble today to set up this stream, and I've absolutely boomered the thumbnail, so, you know, on the on the VOD it's gonna be fine. And in fact it's fine now, but I've posted an announcement before, and well, that has currently no thumbnail on mine and a broken thumbnail on post, so pardon, excuse me for absolutely boomering like no one's ever boomered before. What I'm gonna do, so I'm gonna wait a bit until somebody shows up in chat, and if somebody shows up in chat, I'll hop on over to the topic of the video, but before I begin that, I'll sketch something, doodle something, get warmed up on talking, get warmed up on drawing perhaps, maybe. I'll also start the timer, because why not, you know, gotta make sure that's running. How long does this cache for? Sorry, I'm just very bothered about myself boomering the thumbnail of this stream, because I think it's cool, and now it shows up as the wrong stream entirely on platforms, and that's a problem. So I'm gonna use this time to perhaps add this to the post that maybe makes it disappear. No, it doesn't. Can I remove the embed from this? man, I'm so bad. I'm so bad at that. Pardon. Can I somehow fix that? I don't think I can. I think it's over. I think I've boomered it forever, unless I delete the post and repost it later. So, alright, let me just ensure one more thing. Right, making sure nobody gets in the way. I would say getting some sunlight up in here, but there's no sunlight outside, so that doesn't qualify in the slightest. Now, I have my YouTube chat set to live chat, so hopefully if somebody shows up, I am going to notice, but the problem is, last time I streamed, either live chat broke, or I mistakenly, when I rebooted the stream, I forgot to set it to live chat, and I missed a bunch of messages, which is just on par with absolute boomerisms, the absolute kind of boomerisms, you know, that could happen in a stream like this. Highly professional, you know, and all that jazz. Yeah, so let's warm up with some doodles, and then I'm gonna hop over to thinking about intellectual property, which is a topic that's been kind of bothering me for a while. Because you know what, like, we all live online. Well, not we don't all do it, but we certainly, a lot of our lives nowadays are online, and a lot of these issues with intellectual property, people just kind of, you know, go about them on intuition, which is not necessarily wrong. It's just I think I'd like to have a position that I can actually, you know, argue in some way, or maybe explain. And I've heard arguments from both sides. I've heard arguments from the pro-intellectual property side. I've heard some from the anti-intellectual property side, and you know, frankly, I just want to think about it. So that's what this stream is going to be about. Once Hunter, somebody else, shows up in the chat, you know, I wouldn't want to clickbait anybody, so no, we certainly got to talk about it. So just a little bit of a running start for any people who'd like to join. Because frankly, you know, oh, hello Hunter, I am basically all set up to go. Just, yeah, okay, once again, I have looked at the chat and entirely lost my train of thought in the middle of saying a sentence. I really have got to stop doing that. But regardless, okay, let me do this. I'm gonna first have this file saved in a place that is secure, and then I'm gonna switch my screen over to the tool I use for thinking, which is like a conspiracy board, but they made it into a software. It's pretty cool. I'm gonna talk about it in a moment. Let me just, it's not going well for me trying to do things at the same time as I talk, and since I'm doing something boring, I'm trying to talk in the middle of doing it, so it's not boring. But then I'm doing it slower, so I'm actually prolonging the pain. Okay, let's do this, and then save it as IP. Okay, and now I am, I think, ready to switch over in OBS. All right, hello. So this software is called Flying Logic, and it's pretty good. Hello, all my NYs. It's pretty good for organizing your thoughts. Basic premise, you add these little boxes, you know, you can type whatever you want in them, and you can add other boxes. So, you know, you can add a second thing, you can add a third thing, and then as you add them and as you connect them up with arrows, it automatically lays itself out to minimize intersections, and basically you can also change the rules of how it's laid out as we go. So what I'm gonna do, what I think I'm gonna do anyway, is I'm just gonna be throwing these out as I think about them, and we'll just see what happens, honestly, because I am not prepared. That's kind of the point of this. So to start, I'll start dropping stuff I do have on my mind, which is React content. That's one thing. Definitely have music copyright, game music copyright on YouTube. That's one that's been plaguing me for a while, because a lot of people use game music as an example of, like, basically put game music in the background of videos, and they get away with that because game music is played in gameplay footage, so it can't be claimed as easily as any other, you know, bit of music. But does it make it morally okay, like ethically okay, to actually use that music as a background music for your unrelated content to the game being played? Long plays of movie games. So that's where you long plays of movie games, basically when a game requires minimum input, and you basically all you have to do is to press the unpause button. It's copyright law and moral imperative. Okay, so to make sure I am understanding this right, does that mean basically is the law aligned with the morals, or is something like that? Is the law and morals, are the law and morals aligned? Is that what I should be getting from that? Pardon, I think that's a bit of a language barrier issue on my part. Okay, is copyright law imperative? What does this mean? Okay. Is it possible to join me in a call? Sure. I'd appreciate that, in fact. Let me Alright. I've got my headphones on, I've got a Discord, I've got you on Discord. I'll just enable desktop audio on OBS, and sure enough, you know, call me up on Discord and I'll answer. It's probably gonna be easier. Alright, I'll keep tabs on the Discord window in the other screen, and continue. So what else is there that... Yeah, for sure something to mention is piracy. The classic piracy doesn't equal stealing. So that kind of from that flows, or rather this flows from, to put that better, would be making a copy is not depriving someone of something, only of potential. And from that, like, piracy doesn't equal stealing, but also you're not depriving someone of something, only of potential, so it's very hard to... Actually, no, it's impossible. It's impossible to calculate harm done, because you cannot predict the future. You can maybe, you know, you can safely assume certain things, maybe, you know, if you know what, no, it's impossible to calculate harm done exactly. You might estimate it, but I don't think you can actually calculate it in any meaningful way. React content, how much, what does it mean to transform something? Is watching it with a friend / community. Oh, hello.
Cunning.
Gooding indeed. I shall share with you on Discord my screen as well, so you get less lag, and probably in better text readability format. Although I hope that doesn't butcher that butchers it down to 5 FPS. Well, hopefully you'll be able to keep up as I keep connecting these, because they might start flying about once it's a bigger network. Anyway,
I think you're right.
All right. So I'm just jotting things down, basically. So if you have anything, okay, if you want to explain to me what is copyright law a moral imperative means, because I genuinely language barrier. So fire away.
By all means. No, that's fair. First of all, is my audio okay?
Yes, as far as I'm concerned, you sound like a person with a microphone. That's good enough.
Okay. So the copyright law is a moral imperative was directly in relation to game music copyright on YouTube. So as far as that's concerned, like, what is the argument about whether or not something is wrong to use as far as copyright is concerned, right? Is the argument that someone who created whatever the thing is, in this case game music, would lose out on potential income or some kind of revenue because someone else happened to use their game music on a completely unrelated stream? Is that the argument?
I don't think that's my argument, at the very least, because I'm not really convinced it's a good idea to judge this based on outcome. Because I think if you, I think you're probably familiar with the idea of React streamers who just sit in a corner or have their chair sit in a corner and just watch a whole video on stream, right? So in that case, I don't think I care if the original creator is impacted negatively or positively, or if the original creator is happy about it or not. I think it's kind of not okay from the point of view of just you are being lazy, right? You are... I don't know how to explain this. Like, you are not putting in work where you should be putting it in work. I am gonna be tripping over my words.
You're right.
So argument about...
May I rephrase what it sounds like you're saying?
Absolutely.
So it sounds like you're saying that the issue isn't necessarily that someone is using someone else's work and therefore copyright issues, blah, blah, blah. It's that someone else is basically completely reposting someone else's work, making some kind of money off of it without doing literally anything to alter its content besides simply appearing somewhere on the screen. Is that kind of the issue?
Yeah, I'm thinking because I'm trying to separate the two kind of issues, because I think one of these is when you are freebooting someone's content without permission. That's a different issue from, if you've made the original video lose revenue, because you can make a video lose revenue just on the fact that you are reacting to it and saying how bad it is. Right, so if you are making a popular video
Sure.
about how something's horrible, then probably a lot of people might not be interested in watching it anymore. But that's surely okay to do.
Right, but your question is for the people, and to be clear, they are adding no commentary to the video. They're not saying anything about it. It's literally just them basically just watching the video, and their quote unquote transformative aspect is that their face basically appears on the screen. That's what you're concerned about. Is that fair?
Well, I'm kind of just honestly, like, this is not really an argument from me. I'm just trying to figure out what I even think about it. So I'm not even saying I'm like taking a position, right? So
sure. But I think what I'm asking is what I just described is that what you are referring to, and you're wondering, is this actually a problem, or is this okay? Is what I described exactly what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're on the same page, talking about the same thing.
Yep, that's that's the freebooting without permission, essentially. It's just you in a corner and doing nothing.
Okay, I wasn't familiar with the term freebooting in this context, so.
Okay, I might be using it. I might be using it wrong. do correct me on bad English.
Okay. No, I don't know that you are. It's just a term I'm not familiar with.
I think it's a word. Now you got me doubting myself.
No. It is a word. It probably could reasonably apply as a form of slang in this context. I just don't. I've never heard it used as slang in that way, but it's probably not inappropriate, to be honest.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Very interesting thought I had. I was watching some discussion about this. Does Twitch chat on the screen constitute commentary on the original video? Which is an argument to me on like an intuitive level. I am on an intuitive level, it's like obviously not. But then I'm thinking of it like, well, if you are commenting on the video and that constitutes, a transformation of the video, then surely if you add comments, does it matter if they are in text or in audio form?
What kind of implications does this have for the comment section of YouTube then?
Like, that's interesting. On YouTube, the comment section is generally out of the video, right? It's a separate thing from the content you are creating. So if you are putting a video up on YouTube,
it's a part of the. There's an argument to be made that it's a part of the content because it's in relation to it. Whether or not it happens to appear in the content, there might be an argument to be made that it is inherently directly connected to it.
It's like, what about YouTube comments under? That. I feel like YouTube comments under a video definitely cross the line where it's like you are re-uploading someone else's video and claiming that it is transformative because you have your own comment section. It's like that doesn't convince me, definitely.
Fair enough, and that's fair. I think the thing about the displaying Twitch chat on screen with the person doing basically nothing, that is like the lowest possible form of transformation, with like absolutely zero effort. You know what I mean?
that yeah, that's it's not even like I'm thinking about it as in like who claims to be the creator of the React content, right? Because if you are
Yeah.
putting something like that, you are usually you're like placing your name. So in a scenario like this, could you
Hmm.
you could once again you could remove the guy in the corner uh
Yep.
entirely, and you just are left with re-uploading someone's videos on a live stream in a live chat, you know, together, which feels like a premiere but weird and on somebody else's channel.
Indeed.
So like to
I
this,
mean,
yeah,
hmm
go ahead.
no, no, no. I, I
As
was I,
yeah,
I was gonna say to me it sounds like it's it's one of those facets of um, very complicated law where like people will do whatever is the bare minimum necessary in order to kind of meet
get
the
by,
threshold
yeah.
barrier. Yeah. And because we live in a society where these concepts have been debated over and over by legal cases and what have you, and to be fair, YouTube reinterprets um, laws basically according to what they think. So
Yeah,
depending upon
they have a pretty
the
much
video streaming
monopoly, right?
platform,
So
yeah. So depending upon the video streaming platform, this may not even necessarily refer to actual laws, but simply refer to the way that YouTube implements their copyright system, right?
yeah, but then there's,
So,
you know, a whole separate issue of what is ethical and what is permissible on YouTube and what is, you know, permissible in law. Because, like, there's the
indeed.
free. Uh, okay, so this kind of what is. Okay, this is a copyright law, is a moral imperative. There should be some kind of section with, like, it has 3 points in parallel, so I'm gonna group these and call them. Issues maybe, so it's like
Mm-hmm.
uh there's gonna be ethical concerns, which is like what can I do as a creator, I suppose.
Yeah.
Then we would have legal concerns, what is legal, which would depend on the country basically, and
Yep.
then how does a platform enforce, apply the rules, make its own.
I think the legal concerns not only depends on the country, but also the method of content. So, for example, like it's if you want to keep this conversation specifically to video, that's fine. Then the legal concerns are based exclusively on the country. But depending upon what other types of content, then uh, legal concerns also drastically spiral out based on that. Am I
Yeah,
making
because
sense?
intellectual property is a very wide umbrella, right? I'm kind of in the mindset of it being YouTube videos and React content, but there's like
Yeah.
patents, there's you know, entire IPs in terms of.
Right.
It's interesting because in English you call it IPs. You call it intellectual property to describe like a franchise of movies, for example.
Sure.
It's interesting that it's used this way. Um,
Indeed.
okay, so this depends on country and kind of content. Very wide topic that I frankly have no knowledge on.
That's fine. We do, we could. I'm fine if we pare down the discussion. I was simply
Yep,
bringing it
yep.
up if it was relevant.
No, what's nice about this graph is if I want to later collapse legal concerns, like if it was too big, I can just collapse the group, and it becomes like this little node. So
That's
it,
cool.
you know, and it all lays itself out. So I'm fine with pretty much throwing anything that goes into the software and just arranging it until it looks like something that's, you know, manageable. Okay, so what's the so ethical concerns are certainly connected to the fact that making a copy is not the same as you know, taking something from someone. It's one of these comments that I can never tell if it's autistically you know, annoying to people or if it's actually important. But I am certainly in the camp of piracy doesn't equal stealing. Piracy is piracy. It's not the same because you are not taking something from someone. You are creating a copy. It's a different issue.
I think that whether the actual what's the term? Whether the actual implementation is different, the end result is the same to some degree.
Is it though? Because this is kind of the second node here. Yeah, it's like in the case of depriving someone of potential instead of depriving someone of something something that they have, it's basically impossible to calculate the harm that's been done. So you can't, like, what's the correct compensation for pirating something? And that is also separate from what is the appropriate compensation for, freebooting someone's content. Because you never know, like, what kind of effect does it have on the person's views, ad revenue, whatever, like exposure. I think it's basically impossible to calculate with how many variables you would have to consider.
Okay, so when you said pirating, my thoughts immediately go to like video games and stuff like that, right? So
yeah, sure.
In the world of video games, whether or not I stole a copy of Modern Warfare 3 or whatever, versus if I pirated a copy, the end result is that whoever produced that game doesn't get my money, but I am benefiting from their efforts from whatever content they produced, right?
Yes.
So in the world of something like music or movies, and maybe this is something I'm just missing. In the world of music, movies, or video games, or art, textbooks, whatever you can get off of the Pirate Bay, right?
Which is probably anything.
Right? Seemingly, the end result is the same, versus whether or not I physically took it from someone, or like, let's say from the store or whatever.
Actually, isn't the end result also the same if you purchase a used copy? You've effectively deprived the original creator of revenue they could have gotten from you if you went and bought a new one, and instead you've bought, a second-hand CD.
That is somewhat reasonable, except for the actual point of copyright is to protect property rights, right? And so,
intellectual
property
property.
Rights, sure, but in having a physical copy that is a representation of the intellectual property.
Yeah, well, so actually you've deprived you maybe have deprived the original creator from revenue you would have gotten by buying a new copy, but you've also deprived the person you bought the copy from of that copy. So
no, you haven't deprived them of anything, simply because
you've compensated for
willingly,
it. Yeah,
they willingly entered it into that transaction.
Yeah, I'm using the wrong word, clearly, but the idea is that, you've not made a copy, you've transferred a copy from someone else to yourself. But then...
right, but they're like, that's what property rights are.
As in?
So, like, let's use a specific example. I have a physical disc of Modern Warfare 3. I sell it to you, and you take that used disc, and now you own it. I had a right to that disc because I purchased it. When I purchased it from someone else, they gave me the right to own that disc and do with it as I wished, because I gave them some form of compensation. So whether or not I am deprived of it is irrelevant, because I exercised my right to my property to do with it as I wished, which includes selling it.
Yeah, but so copyright is then the right to create copies, right? So the idea is that you can sell the original copy you got, but you cannot make a copy of your copy and sell that. That's what
Okay, fair enough.
that's what copyright prevents you from doing, right? That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's like only the original author can create kind of legal copies unless the original author decides to give that right away to other people, such as the case in
Yes.
like open source software or basically anything you have a license. You get a license from the creator, and then you are legally allowed to
Distribute as you wish, or
yeah.
use it, or what have you.
This
I
is
think that
yeah.
the conversation surrounding like piracy and stealing, I have a hard time disassociating between the two, simply because like, okay, yes, you simply created a copy versus a physical copy existing and someone else being deprived of that physical copy. To some degree, the end result is the same, because you have a thing that someone else created that you didn't get through some kind of legal means, right?
Yep.
Although I may be, to be fair, I may be missing some of the nuance in the conversation surrounding copyright, so that might be my own issue in this conversation.
Well, I think it's the difference. The difference is often in those, you know, those anti-piracy ads where you've got, you wouldn't download a car. Yeah, exactly. It's like that's the thing. If you could just straight up download a car, I think everybody would download a car.
Yes, they would. It's true.
Now, would it?
Like, yeah.
It's a crazy hypothetical because no, you can't use this hypothetical. Never mind, because it's very specifically, going from the realm. Actually, because then it becomes interesting if you get a copy of a 3D print, of a 3D printing kind of instruction set or whatever you distribute those as, and you use that to make physical copies. And now you've made, well, you are not distributing the file anymore, right? You are distributing something physical that's been created using the file. Sounds like just entirely a different can of worms to open.
So, this is an interesting conversation, and I'm going to bring up a story of American copyright, and I'll tell you why it's interesting. Okay.
All right.
So let's say you and I'm just going to go through the whole story, so don't interrupt me unless you absolutely have to.
Yep.
Okay. Let's say you have a car, right? And I want a 3D printed version of that car, or what have you, right? Actually, for simplicity's sake, let's say it's my car and I want to be able to 3D print another one of it, okay? And so I meticulously take measurements with a micrometer and like take every possible measurement, like internals, externals, like material density, all this kind of stuff. And I have a magic 3D printer where I can, and this is only
just
magical for now,
yeah,
because
I get it.
Print it with the exact specifications as the original.
Yep.
That is completely legal.
So as long as you measure it yourself.
As long as I in American copyright law, as long as I don't claim this, like let's say it's a 1968 Corvette, whatever, right? As long as I don't claim this is a 1968 Corvette, it is completely legal. And I'll give a specific example what this looks like now. Okay, so let's say I have, and this may only relate to stuff that are trade secrets. So I have in my cabinet right now what is the commercial equivalent of the KFC spice recipe. Okay. It is all the same spices in the same quantities and whatever. It does not say KFC spice mix on it or whatever. It says like Marion K99X, right? Okay. And so I know that it is the same thing because other people have tasted it. They're like, yep, this tastes exactly like KFC. They've compared it side by side. It's the same. And it's legal to do because Marion K reverse engineered the 99X recipe the hard way and did not distribute it as whatever the
The
KFC.
KFC secret sauce, but they actually distributed it as our own thing that tastes just like that.
Yes, you could do the same thing with Coca-Cola, which is a trade secret, right? Although there may be some nuance in things that are not necessarily trade secrets, but are still some kind of intellectual property, such as like blueprints for a car or something like that. I don't know exactly what that nuance is. This is definitely outside realm of my expertise.
Yeah, that's interesting because reverse engineering, like that process, right, of taking something that
Mm-hmm.
exists and recreating the original kind of schematics based on that already existed.
Mm-hmm.
Just a whole another kind of worms, because you are not using the original, you are not taking the original design, right? You are creating your, well, you are not creating your own either. It's like,
Yep.
if you, it's like, for example, if you were to describe a car, what level of detail do you have to go into to actually start, turning it into, infringing on someone's intellectual property, or to how that car is designed?
Indeed. It's a question worth asking.
I think it's very similar with if you describe a story of a movie in a video. So like, if could you create a video where you summarize the plot of a movie? It's like, sure, there's a lot of reviews that do just that, but is there a level of detail of explaining the story at which you start getting into the infringement of copyright territory?
Probably so.
Maybe not movie. Maybe a better example would be a book, because a movie you generally have still the part of watching the movie, so all the visuals, audio, stuff like that. But then with a book, you just
I think an interesting example, and I think I've heard of this before. I might be making it up, but I think I've heard of this before. There are people who have taken programs that they like or whatever, and have basically completely reverse engineered copies of these programs without being the same program, but are built almost exactly the same way and accomplish all the same goals, and they're totally legal to possess and own. I think, if I'm not mistaken, something like LibreOffice was done this way. I might be making that up.
Well, it's fine to take it as as an example, even as a hypothetical. It's not a problem. Yeah, surely, because that's a whole another assortment of issues, right? Because you've got software, and there's in terms of algorithms, there are algorithms that are basically made by mathematicians. Does copyright even exist in the world of like mathematics? As in, if you invent a theory, you don't get to be the, I don't, or maybe you do.
I think that you get credit for it, but I don't think that there's like any kind of financial anything involved.
So yeah, so basically, if you work for a company and you invent that for a company, maybe, but could you even patent a math equation, like a natural law?
I don't know.
What, can you patent a math/physics equation? Okay, that's probably somewhere with legal concerns.
I would imagine not, because it has to do with like base properties of the world and how it could simply be like reverse engineered.
Yeah, as in, yeah, but that gets kind of interesting then, because if you, how far does that go?
That might actually fall under trade secrets.
I could, but then on the other hand, what if somebody repeats the same process as you do and creates a copy? Surely then it's okay, as long as you don't call it the original name. That would be the idea.
You're in the same vein as KFC spice recipe.
So basically, yeah. So if you do it again, but does that infringe on a patent if you invent something a second time while there's a patent going on?
I think that it would depend on how you define infringe. So like if you tried to let's say product X exists and I create
Mhm.
product Y that does all the same things that product X does. If product Y, if I try to create a patent on product Y and it works exactly the same way that product X does, my patent will be
Uh,
denied. Like
Okay, so
I would
it's
have to either
so
I'd
is
have to
it tied
distinguish
to a
between
product?
product X and Y. What's that?
So is it tied to a product being sold based on the patent and not the idea itself? It's like you
The
can't.
product is the representation of the idea. Like intellectual property is one form of copyright law. Intellectual property is not the entirety of copyright law.
Hmm. Okay, so in that case, we've got
IP is a subsection of copyright law.
copyright law. All right, throw that somewhere over here. That's a. You know what? These are terms like I've done is I've had a class on it in uni,
Yeah.
on
Yep.
how it works in Poland, and I've
Mm-hmm.
gotten the gist. There's a lot of specifics that are very confusing, frankly, and well, as per usual, you
Yes.
need a lawyer to actually make
Indeed.
sense of all that. Uh,
Yeah.
but there's a distinction, and I've certainly written that's down in somewhere in here. There's personal use versus commercial use, and
Uh-huh.
so you can make a copy of a CD. Like if you get a movie on a CD, it is legal for you to make a copy for personal use.
Mm-hmm.
So, which
It's
well
called burning.
makes sense to do that if you'd like, for example, to preserve it beyond the physical. What's the word? The physical.
Embodiment.
I don't know. There's a word in Polish for something that carries, the thing you are interested in. I don't know if there's an equivalent in English.
Storage media.
Yeah, from the medium. From
Okay.
I guess. So if you'd like to, you know that the CD is gonna decay, but you'd like to keep your copy, or rather keep access to the copy. You can make further
Yeah.
copies for personal use, but you can't sell them. But I think you can hand them to friends. Something like that. It's confusing. Because from what I remember at least, I think you can make a copy and give that copy to a friend if you are not selling it, something like that. So it's like basically the same as borrowing them the original. It's something like that for personal use.
I think the key is if you're profiting off of it or not, because then you're benefiting from someone else's labor,
Yeah, but
and you're taking
surely
profits from it.
if you borrow that to someone, you are depriving someone else of profit, right?
Okay, so that brings up an interesting question: is depriving someone else of profit? Well,
It's even more
yeah, that's
interesting if
perfectly
you.
fair.
It's very interesting if you compare it to piracy, because you could make the argument that piracy is basically borrowing that copy from whoever,
Uh
from
huh.
people you know, but you know them via the
Yeah.
internet and very briefly.
Yeah, that's odd. Hmm.
It's
I
why
think
I've basically
that's
every
one of
time I've
those.
tried thinking about this,
Mhm.
I've ended up going in circles, kind of like this, because it's a lot of this is just very intuitive, and I think even the law we currently have and like the way we operate is a lot of just what feels right to people. And then there's a massive gray zone with piracy, where it's supposedly bad and supposedly illegal, and such, but then people still do it, and
Mhm.
they like don't really care about it.
Yeah, I think I might take some issue with you on the intuitiveness of
Hmm.
copyright law. However, I do think that what we're discussing here is sort of like how, when you have laws that have been on the books for long periods of time, how they sort of morph into these entities. that may not even necessarily represent the initial concepts, and can be sort of morphed into whatever's useful or seemingly useful, I guess. Like
the law spaghetti,
yeah, pretty much.
spaghetti monster of law, where you've got like the classic case of Disney just extending the copyright forever, basically.
Yeah.
It's like that's a whole other can of worms, because it's like, when does copyright ever end? Which is, well, if it's exactly the same as property, then I don't see why it should. Surely.
So I mean, legally, copyright does have an end. I think it's like 99 years or something like that.
Yeah, it probably depends on the country as well.
Yes, anything I'm saying is directly in relation to the US.
Of course.
Specific.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, because you don't have that on physical property, right? You don't get to, like, nobody gets to take your property away from you because you've had it for, I don't know, 100 years. It's been handed down in your family, and now because it's been there for 100 years, well, it's communism time, brother.
Yeah, and that would be immoral in the world of physical property. So does that mean that the 99-year limit is immoral in the world of intellectual property?
Yeah, that's the thing where I'm very hung up on, in terms of, because this is what leads me down, what leads me to understanding the argument of just get rid of IP entirely, right? Because I don't see where the line is. It's like, why should you get it for like this arbitrary amount of time? Is it something we just agree to as a society to, basically encourage you to, encourage people to make things? This is like, oh, if you make something new, you get the profit off of it, for a certain amount of time. And that's kind of it's not necessarily from a principle. It's from, we see this as a benefit to us as a society, to organize things these ways. It's like an optimization, maybe.
So, and boy, is this discussion going to be unpopular. I'm
down.
what you're talking about right now is this actually some line, or is this effectively arbitrary?
Mm-hmm.
That is basically the same conversation as age of consent laws and what have you. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying we should change the age of consent laws at all. Okay.
I'm definitely not saying that.
Okay. I know that you're not. I'm saying that,
yep,
in that they are similar concepts, they don't need to change. Okay.
Yep.
However,
no, I get the idea 18... though. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
it's like, we've decided on a certain boundary, and it's not because there's a hard, there's not necessarily an idea that there's a hard boundary and something magically changes in your body and mind at this age, that it transforms you from one state to another, and it's distinctly different, and you could like test it by, I don't know, whacking someone with a hammer in the knee and testing how it bounces.
Yeah.
It's a good boundary that we've made, to basically separate certain concerns, and there's a gray zone either way, and then there's definitely going way the hell too far.
Yep.
Okay, so where do I place this? It's like somewhere from maybe legal. This is okay. I'm gonna connect this. Connect it out of creator losing out of potential revenue, because this is IP as a mechanism in society to incentivize people to. Is the American spelling with an S or a Z? I can never remember.
Incentivize? I believe it's SE.
SE? Okay, that's how I typed it out as. The Z is too sharp. I pick and choose which when I use English and when I use American.
Yeah. Well, you're a poor after all. So
I am. I am in my heart of hearts. I am just stuck in Europe. IP is to incentivize people to create. Will make it easier for you to. Will make your investment more safe. Maybe.
No, because like the argument for maybe I'm misinterpreting what you're saying, so forgive me if I am.
Yep.
The argument for like limitations on copyright law is like, okay, let's say it's Winnie the Pooh, right? Like universally beloved character that people would love to be able to do things with. The creator of Winnie the Pooh had a copyright on him, and the copyright expired, and now people can do stuff with Winnie the Pooh, right, in their own content. That's the reason for the expiration of, IP copyright, because otherwise,
so this is maybe this node should be patents and not IP.
Probably.
Yeah. Because patents are what you do to like, oh, I've invested a bunch of time and money into developing this technology. I'd now like to make some money off of it, instead of everybody else around me is just waiting for my investment to finish so they can take the result of my labor without investing their own cash. Which is, in a game where there's no rule like this, that sounds like the winning strategy.
That it is. And that's why patent law is so insanely complicated too.
Because it's wouldn't it be? It's complicated because it's arbitrary, and it's basically we've made. You know how it's. I don't know if this is gonna be relatable at all, but this really makes me think of how you design and build software. It's like if you want software for a specific customer, that specific customer is going to have a set of requirements that they need the application to fulfill. And what you are doing is basically making software to satisfy those requirements. But then usually your client doesn't know exactly what they want. So there's no part of the job of us in our business as software engineers or as system analysts is to figure out what the client actually wants and transform that into a complete system. And part of that is usually to prepare the system for changes in the future. So you want to make it in a way that you can extend it with additional functionality, you can change what is there. And a lot of these mechanics in law like this, which are not necessarily done out of just, straight out of principle, but as certain mechanics in society, strike me as very similar to software that's been built without considering the entire picture and then added onto later, with duct tape and super glue, just adding modules to it that kind of conflict with what was there, so we patch it around with an additional thing that has an exception for this particular case, and it becomes this massive spaghetti monster of a system that's just had all of these requirements to satisfy and has been cobbled together over time.
That is almost exactly correct. What you described is very representative of how this stuff comes into being and why we are where we are. That's just true.
Incrementally. So it's kind of so it's it's interesting to talk about, because I think if we approach the problem of at least patents from this perspective, then it actually becomes a discussion of what do we think is gonna give us the best outcome. Because if it's arbitrary and not on principle, then we talk about what's the most effective version of the system we can create. What's the best way to satisfy the requirements, the most optimal way to do it. And it branches away from like ethical concerns. Well, of course you want to make sure the methods you use are ethical, but it's no longer a question of is it ethical or is
Do
it
we
not.
actually want to make sure that the methods that we use are ethical? Is that something that we actually do toward? I don't know if that's true.
What do you mean? When has anybody ever done anything unethical? surely,
Literally can't
surely,
even.
surely nobody has ever done anything unethical to further their own goals. That's not happened.
There's an argument to be made that copyright law as a whole is the furthering of unethical goals, but I don't know that I would make that argument.
From what angle would that be? As in stifling creativity? Would it be that?
Um, you know what? Now that I think about it, if I remember correctly, I think that's a leftist argument. So I'm just gonna drop that right there.
Laws stifling creativity. This kind of reminds me of the whole debacle of Nintendo. Nintendo. Are you aware of what Nintendo's been doing to people who are making fan games, ROM hacks, videos?
Yep. They
It's
shut
like,
down like Dolphin or whatever because of or not Dolphin. There was some emulator company that was
I think it
making
was
that was
Dolphin, wasn't
working
it?
on emulator.
I think
It
it
might
was
have been
Dolphin on
Dolphin. I'm not sure.
Steam. I might have been Dolphin on
That
Steam. I
sounds right.
think
That sounds right.
what I vaguely
They
recall because
actually,
I think Dolphin appeared on Steam for a short while, and then Nintendo took it down because they had some component that was copyrighted by Nintendo, something like that.
yeah, yeah.
And
Interestingly enough, Nintendo was going so far as to like stop tournaments from their games. Like
yep, Smash
Melee has had
Bros, Melee
tournaments for
Smash, yeah.
decades. Yep. Uh-huh.
It's like, oh, you are using a mod.
Yeah.
No, 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 no,
And
no.
they'll even disassociate themselves from it in particular too.
That's just a whole other brand of ridiculous. Because I don't even think mods, like, you don't, I guess it's like, ah. It's like
If anything, mods should add to the conversation of, transformational usage.
well, mods and ROM hacks generally are like the clearest case of transformative because you are literally selling the
Yep.
transformation, or like selling. Well, you
Yep.
are giving out usually the transformation. Like there's usually in the mods you don't have the original content. Even for ROM hacks, right? What you do for ROM hacks is you get the ROM of the original game from, of course, your own cartridge with your own hardware, stuff like that. And then you run a patcher that applies changes to the ROM, hacks the ROM for you essentially. So you get the kind of patch software. You get a patching software. You get a patch from the ROM hacker, and it modifies the original game. So like that's and that's perfectly fine to distribute because it's your own stuff, right? It's like
right,
it's completely separate. And that gets onto a completely separate issue, which is actually very connected, which is companies preventing you from doing that via, was it called EULAs, end user license agreements, or basically any terms of service, stuff like that? Because
EULAs and TOS need to be struck down. Like that's some get the rope level stuff, to be honest.
There's some wonderful stuff, like the stuff about how you waive all of your, like, basically rights to legal process if you use software like stuff like that. It's like, how is this legal exactly?
It's legal because people haven't challenged it. And actually, oftentimes, it happens pretty regularly that TOS and EULAs get struck down in courts. At least in the American system.
We've had, because when we've been making a product of our own, an online application, and it turns out, at least in Polish law, if you make a terms of service for your website, there's clauses that if you use those clauses, you can be sued just for having those clauses in there. Wow. And there are people who straight up just search for any unassuming developers or whoever put a web app up with those terms of service and just look for those clauses. It's like just to sue you for having them.
That's crazy.
Some mechanisms like that also in law, which is weird, frankly, but you really have to be careful with this stuff because it's it's this machine put together from duct tape, spaghetti, and some decades of thinking by different people. It's like you really
That
want to be
doesn't sound very
careful.
appetizing.
No, it doesn't. I don't know. I don't know if it's a shock to say that I don't particularly like bureaucracy. Not a big fan, I'll
Yeah.
be honest.
No. You said spaghetti, so I started thinking about food. So I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound like good food.
Yeah, I feel like
duct tape
spaghetti.
That
Yeah,
sucks.
I feel like duct tape spaghetti is just the mental image of that meal is just really fitting for how I feel about legislation.
Yeah, it's about accurate.
Duct tape spaghetti. We've gone a long way away from the React videos because I think React videos
okay?
I of course. This is pondering about. I literally whatever comes up is good because it falls under pondering about.
Okay.
There's no structure to the stream. We are in anarchy zone.
Good. Well, my concern is like, okay, I'm participating in this. Is what I'm doing helpful to my friend? That is my primary concern.
I think it is helpful because I've wanted to do something like this for a while. Just throw stuff out there and get it thought through. Because I feel like something like this, it's something I've always felt was missing from a lot of videos and streams I've watched of people talking about stuff and especially debating.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
software like this would just make debates so much more productive. If you had, if I was debating someone, I'd like to do it with this and just start mapping the argument out like this. So like, what has he started with? What has it gone to? What has it tangented onto? If you lay it all out like that, I feel like that's way better for me to actually figure out what the other person means as opposed to, just they are waving their hands in the air. It's easy to misunderstand and I might miss what I don't understand. And, it becomes a hot mess of usually drama and, oh, this person is a massive retard. And,
yep.
And my guy is the smartest person on the internet.
Right. So let's just. I agree with your point, and I say let's assume that what you just said is true. Okay.
Okay. I like assuming I'm right.
Let's assume you're right in this instance. What does that say about debating on the internet?
Well, it says that debating on the internet is the most productive use of your time you could possibly have.
Not nearly. I think it actually says the opposite. That debating on the
What?
internet.
No way.
Because this is not hard. This concept is not hard. You don't even need software to do it. You can do it with pen and paper.
You can do it with pen and paper, exactly. Software is just nice because you can connect it and navigate it a lot easier.
Sure. So that being said, nobody uses pen and paper to debate, right?
Yep.
So, assuming that they don't, that probably means that the goal of debate is not to be clear and to clarify your opponent's arguments and try to understand what they're saying. The goal of debate is click drama.
Ooh, we in grifting land.
Indeed.
I mean, as entertaining as internet drama sometimes is, like if it's on a topic you actually would like to think about and know more about, it's just I just find it bizarre because there's so many people that do this, and it's like there's really no one that does it this way. In my particular autistic implementation of it, what?
What are incentives and how do they work, Torrid?
Come on. Listen, I've lost a lot of faith in humanity over my time in uni. I'm not done losing it yet. You are helping. I am clearly not deep enough down in the hole of despair on the state of humanity. As I'm not as deep as I should be.
I don't even know that it's despair. So I take issue with you calling it despair. To be clear, I think there is some relief to some degree in maybe this is in like a sort of backwards way. There for me, an understanding like how people actually work versus the prescribed way that people say that they work, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's actually some relief involved in that, because it's like, oh, these things that don't make sense in my life as to people's behavior and
Yep.
why I didn't understand why things work a certain way. And you would think with, internet debate culture being such a huge deal, how come we can't actually agree on anything? It seems like
Yep.
people are only becoming more divisive and what have you. When you understand it in that it's basically like the reverse of what people say that it is,
Like
it makes a
we are
whole lot
basically
more of
all
the
here
world
to
make a lot
farm.
more
If
sense.
if you assume we are all here to farm clicks, it all makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Basically. So it's like, why does nobody
Yep.
want to just, sit down, discuss it like a normal person without causing all this drama, calling people names and such? It's like,
But people don't
well,
even do that in real life.
I know it's painful.
Right.
Sorry,
It is.
I'm autistic as hell.
I, I, yes, and same. Like, I'm right there with you.
it's it's a sometimes it's a lonely world. With perspective like
And
that,
so,
it's like,
okay,
yeah.
I think where I differ slightly is like I am also autistic. I would like it to work this way. However, I have already gone through enough pain and suffering of not understanding how people are. And so now that there is some kind of understanding of how people actually are, and that understanding is available, I really do think it scratches that itch. Like, okay, fine. I don't like the rules. I would at least like to
Yeah, the
understand them.
game sucks, but I at least I know it's a game. I know what the rules are somewhat.
Hmm. Yep. That's kind
I
of where I sit,
get something out of that. Yeah, I think
Yep.
I also feel this way in terms of like internet debates and watching them. It's like sometimes, yeah, I realize this is completely unproductive, but I'm still gonna watch it because it's funny.
Indeed.
It's kind of, I don't
Entertainment
like the
is a
game, but
relevant factor.
it's just, well, I liked it because I've watched like V. You probably know V, right? Surely.
Of like Sargon of Akkad?
Yeah, that kind of circle.
Yeah, the Romanian, yeah.
Yeah, the so he's been like going back and forth with I think just some guy, and he's like,
Okay.
and he's basically JSG has accused V of like, oh, you are only doing it for the bukake of likes, and
Oh my god.
I know brilliant language and very very agreeable nature of such stuff like that, but I like
Yeah.
that V in his response basically the first thing he says is like, yeah, we are both doing it for this exact reason. It's like that's why we are here.
Yep.
I am an entertainment channel,
Meet
and
me, I'm Kettle.
I am making entertainment, right, for the people
Yeah.
watching. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
good point. It's
Sort
like,
of the definition of the pot calling the kettle black.
yeah, it really it's really much nicer if there's no pretense of, oh, I'm debating for this high moral reason because I am a
Yeah.
principled individual and this heathen over
Okay,
there.
Destiny.
Oh Lord, I've part of why brought this back up is I've been watching Mauler talking to Destiny about
Oh
this
Jesus.
issue, and holy shit, the Destiny take is basically like he's basically arguing whether it causes harm or not. It's like if it doesn't cause harm, there's no problem. It's like, well, so if there's a guy with a video with his
Yeah.
chair in the corner and is the only question is, was the original creator negatively impacted? And if the original creator was not negatively impacted, then nothing bad happened. Which
Yeah,
is,
the whole "does it cause harm" thing is definitely it's a leftist argument, and to be fair, that's kind of where I started in that conversation.
I'm just, I just don't get it. Like, I kind of get it, but I don't get it. As in, it's like, it's the ends justify the means, right? Like, I guess that's the, like, critical idea, but that is so against, like, every value I've been raised with, I just can't twist myself into this pretzel to kind of, fit it into my brain to understand that somebody can think like this, but I see people that do, so it's It's like, who cares if you've put in the effort or not? You know, you got to the same result, so why does it matter?
But Torrid, have you considered that if you simply value whatever dopaminergic response you can get in life as the highest moral good, that you might also feel
Oh,
the same way as these retards?
will I feel the same way though? Because I don't think I can.
Shut up, take dopamine.
I think I'd have to start doing a lot more coke than I am doing.
Probably.
it's it's like I'm trying to understand, but it's just not. It just doesn't fit in my brain. I feel very similar because AI. I've not even gone into AI stuff yet in here, but I
Yeah.
feel about it in a very, very similar fashion about the arguments from people supporting AI. It's like, well, since, you know, if you want to just stay on top of the game, then you will surely just use AI as an artist to accelerate your process, you know, to pump out more work faster. And it feels to me like basically the same argument of like something being lost in something important about the process and about getting there and about the way you get there is getting lost in that view where it's just, you know, you can have a pretty picture faster. It's like, sure, for maybe for commercial value that is sensible, but from every other angle it doesn't compute to me.
You know what's going to be really interesting?
Hmm?
When people start applying AI to logo generation.
Ooh. Can you copyright, like, do you do get like ownership of the thing that the AI produces, right? Actually, that depends on terms of service, I think. I don't think that's
I
even
don't I
decided.
don't think I don't think that's been decided by
But
copyright courts yet.
yeah, so it's basically a new issue. We
Yeah.
don't really know yet. Yeah, that's gonna be
Yep.
a problem because imagine you make a logo based on what an AI generated, and then you get sued by like OpenAI or whoever for,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you've done this using our model. Well,
Indeed.
or if then later it turns out you couldn't have copyrighted that, for example, so like you can't, because this is a thought I didn't really hear anybody else express in this way. It's like when you create something using an AI model, who is,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's often said like, oh yeah, it's your work because you've provided the prompt. But what I think gets left out usually is the inputs to the creative, quote unquote, creative process of the AI, or rather the simulation
Mm-hmm.
of it using random numbers. The
Right.
inputs to that process are your prompt, but also millions of images, you know, loaded from people all over the internet with all those topics and associated tags, and, you know, blended into the model, the data model. It's like the model doesn't contain the original images anymore, but when you know, type in that prompt and click generate, that is the AI is drawing from the original data source, you know, even if it's stored in a very compressed and different way. It's like there's effectively thousands or millions of authors of the thing you've just generated, like all of them kind of co-authoring it via this, you know, Lovecraftian amalgamation of an algorithm.
I think that actually comes back to the conversation that we had about transformation.
Hmm?
Like, by AI using existing imagery and what have you, it is actually taking that and transforming that into the new what have you. Now that might not be relevant to, you know, things that are patented or what have you, um, but at least in principle, seemingly the laws and the issues surrounding copyrighted content um, would apply to AI generated art.
Yeah, but how do you resolve that when you've got all of these people in there? It's like if you
No,
got
but
the
it's transformative.
is transform. Hmm. So transformative because...
Is AI
Yeah.
transformative? That's probably a good question.
Is AI... Well, you know, a lot of people, when talking about AI art and stuff like that, say that AI cannot be creative, and I think that is true in sentiment, but I don't think that's true in practice, because if you only look at the outcome, you can't differentiate between an outcome that is done because a human, you know, had a creative input and otherwise because an AI had a random number generated somewhere in the process. And then, so maybe to better explain it, it's like if you can make algorithms that use random chance and then test stuff around that random chance, so do small deviations and then have some kind of judging mechanism that is telling the algorithm whether it's gotten closer to whether the solution has gotten better or worse. And basically through that process, a random numbers can be used to basically improve iteratively over a solution. It's like a simulation of a human creative process, but you've kind of taken the human out and you've replaced the human with, you know, some function that calculates how good a thing is, and then another function that basically creates a new version, and then, you know, you just run that in a loop until it improves itself to some threshold or until it runs out of iterations. So in that regard, AI absolutely can be creative, as in you can get creative results of an AI because there's a random number generator there, right? You can make it.
Sure.
It's like then it becomes a question of, it's like, does the process matter? This really gets into what even is art, which is a whole can of worms that maybe I won't go into. But it's like, is it transformative? I have to say it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you have an option otherwise.
Yep.
I don't think there's a good, honest argument to say that AI is not transformative.
Yeah, it's pardon the Twitter language, but it's like artist cope to say that it is not. It's like you can't.
This is meme cope.
You can't take, you know, you take a bunch of samples of AI art and you can't, like, people have tried, let's like, oh, sometimes it generates something similar to one of the images in the input. It's like, yeah, there's vague cases like that, but that's just such a margin. Like, most of the time it's actually blending so much together you can't tell what it's actually sourced. Aside from that one AI that generates anime images that all look like Genshin Impact.
I haven't seen that.
There's like some, I think Chinese or like Japanese, some kind of Asian, because they use those funny squiggly characters, and I'm not moon runes essentially. So basically,
goddamn moon speak.
It's like basically it takes any picture you give it and transforms it into an anime, but all the anime it does, it looks just like Genshin Impact.
Well, I think I've seen that. I've seen shorts of like some chicks who are like, I want to look like a big titty anime girl, and so they do weird stuff like hug their knees up to their chest.
Yeah.
And so the AI thinks that their knees are like cleavage.
I've seen the best example of that with a guy with a guitar, and it interpreted this as like bare butt cheeks at a very weird angle. That's funny stuff with that. Like, this is a whole kind of worms, because it has to be transformative, but there's another question in here, as in, who is the author of an AI generated image? Because this is kind of there's like two sides of this, and I think they are both wrong. It's like, this kind of goes back to what I've already said. So there's the side of the, you know, the artists, quote unquote, that say, oh, it's all the images that have been loaded of the internet that are, you know, the authors of this image, something like that, that's been stolen from those people. And then you have the, you know, AI art bros who say, no, I am the author because I've provided the prompt.
So, I think if we're going to have like, I think if we're going to have some kind of actually functional definition of the author of the image, like
Mm-hmm.
you can get hyper autistic and you can say, yeah, it's all the, millions of images that were used as sampling text or sampling for, the art
Mm-hmm.
itself that was originally there. That is the autistic definition, and that's probably the most technically correct definition. There is no way you can do anything with that.
Yep, it's effectively
It
useless
is
if you.
it is completely like non-functional. Okay. In my opinion, the only functional definition would be the person who either A, it has no author and is therefore free from, copyright completely, or intellectual property rights completely. It's effectively a like a public use image or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Or B, it is
The
the person
prompter.
who generated the prompt.
Yeah, and I think in this case it's gonna have. If we combine this with is AI, like if AI has to be transformative, then surely it has to be the prompt guy, because you can't. It makes, if you give it to everyone, it makes it useless. If you've the AI doesn't generate
Okay.
the same result for the same prompt twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like if you've generated it, nobody else is gonna generate it again. That's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Then if there's a specific prompt, like there's something very specific, then you might get similar. You might get very similar results from the AI if it has the same model and
Yeah.
the same prompt, and the prompt is specific.
Right.
I could imagine like two AI bros going to court about who's made the AI generated image first. No, bro, this anime girl is mine. I've generated her first from my like 20-word prompt. It's like, yeah, but I've had the same prompt.
I wonder if a more functional definition would simply be that all AI generated images are subject to public ownership and therefore cannot be copyrighted.
Well, there's certainly fitting for how the AI was trained. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the AI was clearly trained without any regard for AI was trained without
Like the only
regard
way that you could apply
for.
copyright law to what it generates is if um no, that's not real. Never mind. I'm gonna stop talking. Go ahead.
So it's like the AI was clearly trained like nobody cared about the copyright of the people that had the images
Mm-hmm.
downloaded, with the reasoning being something like, well, you've put it out publicly on the internet for everyone, so it's fine to take. Which
Yeah.
is very interesting because the people behind the image generating AIs have also said that they couldn't do the same to music, because it turns out music is actually much better copyright protected on the internet, and basically if the AI generated samples similar to the original data sources, they would have been dragged through hell legally. So they've basically refrained
So
from. I think they've made a sound generating model, but they've made sure to actually use copyright free data sources to train it.
uh, so you say that. I don't
Mm-hmm.
believe that that's true, and I'll tell you why.
Okay, I might be wrong, so go ahead.
Um, and maybe it's just these people are like a lawsuit waiting to happen, and that could be the case. However, um, they've taken clips from SpongeBob and
Mm-hmm.
like
Oh, AI
trained it on
sponge, yeah.
like trained it on like Plankton's voice or Mr. Krabs' voice or what
Mm-hmm.
have you, and then they'll take that voice and make it sing, like Tool
Mm-hmm.
or something along those lines.
Oh, that's a copyright spaghetti.
Yep.
You're taking a copyrighted character, probably a voice that has something to do with copyright, maybe, like
Well,
making
it's
an
the
impression of
likeness of
that.
someone. It's the likeness of whoever the. It's the
The voice
likeness of
actor
whoever
is.
the. Exactly.
And then you are stacking that on top of singing some copyrighted song.
Mm-hmm.
That's that is the first thing that comes to mind. Is like that is such a current year thing to have happen.
Uh-huh.
It's
And
like
to be completely honest, actually liking a lot of the music that I've found um, covers for, because they're basically covers,
yep.
which might be how they um, get around the copyright aspect of it, because it often says like AI cover in the title or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I've seen
A lot of
those.
the
Yeah.
a lot of the
Mr.
Plankton ones
Krabs
are
sings
really good.
something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's surely transformative, right? Of the original song at the very least. And that is also transformative of the
Arguably.
and that is also transformative of the original property as well, because surely you are providing, I don't know if I can call it a parody, but it sounds like a parody. Like, it's surely a parody of the song if you make Mr. Krabs sing the song, but then is it a parody of
So
SpongeBob if you do that?
it isn't a parody, it's a cover. And I've
Mm-hmm.
actually played with this idea myself. So I can did you ever watch Lilo and Stitch?
Years ago.
Okay. I can do a half decent version of the Stitch voice, okay?
Okay, I'll have to believe you because I do not remember what that sounds like at all.
Okay. I'm not going to do it right now just because I don't feel like it. But
Yep.
basically, I have considered doing covers of songs as Stitch and then like making a YouTube channel out of it, like Stitch does.
Mm-hmm.
And I've looked it up and I cannot find anyone doing this yet. And I'm wondering if it like is this like some super secret awesome idea that is going to make millions of dollars and
Oh, has
make
everybody
me
been
super
banned?
rich. Mm-hmm.
Uh,
So, um, and given the popularity of AI covers, I have a feeling that that might be the case. You know what I mean?
so like that might be a great idea. Is what you mean,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be. I fail to see. Depends, I guess. I guess depends on where the music is coming from. Where does the music under the voice come from? That's because it's surely transformative. An AI cover like that, or like an impersonation cover, is surely transformative of the original song. Like, nobody's gonna surely argue it's the exact same. And it's surely transformative from the property the character you are impersonating is from, right? That's
Indeed.
transformative. The only part of this would be where the actual music. So like, where do you get the actual music? Because there's a background sound. There's not just the voice.
So, if I had to guess, I would think that song covers are some kind of protected music copyright. Um,
So like,
because
as
lots
in
of
you
people
surely you
do covers
can
of
do
songs.
them, as in, right?
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because lots of people do song covers, and you don't hear about people getting sued regularly for doing song covers or anything like that.
Yep. That's
I
but
don't know.
song covers, because there's also a whole another issue with regards to YouTube specifically, or probably
Yeah.
other things also. But YouTube allows a lot of the time YouTube kind of allows you to upload copyrighted music, and then the creator of the music just claims the revenue on your video, and it's like,
Sure.
it's a very interesting system because I don't think that counts as giving you permission to do it. But then, they just decide, like, if you infringe, we are going to take this action. And I think a lot of people have just kind of taken that as permission. And then you have I don't know, frag compilations from CS:GO with copyrighted music. And it's just, the person just doesn't make money off of it. The money goes to the music creator. and it's like kind of like an implicit permission, I suppose. But is it though?
I mean, if I think with those, like allowing the copyright to stay up or whatever, or the copyrighted content to stay up,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I would think it was like, okay, this person actually owns this, therefore they get creative control about what actually happens to it. Like, do they want this video to stay up? Do they want it to stay down? And so they can take down your stuff if they want to, but oftentimes
They don't. Oh, hello? Are you gone? Guys, I think we might have lost Hunter.
sorry,
Oh, there you go.
my phone doesn't like to I did a couple random things on my phone really quick, and it doesn't like
Okay.
to actually make me talk on Discord if I lock my phone.
Stop! I can only take so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like game.
But yeah, it's exactly what you said. Yeah.
Background because it isn't, and it's kind of the game music in the background. I think it works in a very similar fashion. So it's like game music is taken as like implicit permission because it's not struck, but the reason I think it's not struck is because you couldn't strike it without striking gameplay footage, which is allowed. So it kind of has this niche.
It's possible.
Because
it sort of falls through the cracks, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's because it isn't, because nobody is capable of manually filtering YouTube content, like watching through all of it. There's like a ridiculous amount of hours uploaded every minute. It's like you would have to have a massive company dedicated only to watching every video. So this has to be automated. But if you want to detect game music, and copyright that, like claim the video or something, then like everything that has the game music in it is gonna be claimed. But then,
yeah,
it is a matter of how do I differentiate this person using my music in the background, my game music in the background because it's gameplay with that music, or how is it when it's not gameplay, it's just a random video. How do you differentiate that from somebody doing review of the game and using the music? Is using the music in the background of a review of the same game fine? Because that's actually not, I don't think that's like automatically assumed. It's this issue, I've never seen. Well, incentives, once again, of course, nobody's incentivized to think about this too hard, because a lot of people just straight up use the music without thinking. But it's my autistic nature can't help but be bothered about this.
I don't have any useful commentary. I'm sorry.
Because this game music thing has been a thing for like forever on YouTube, as far as I'm aware. It's like it's basically one of the universally accepted ways to get music in the background is to use game music. And I think I've even heard people who talk about, using music in the background and such, just they take for granted that you can do it with video game music. And I genuinely don't think I've ever heard anyone like notice this, that this might be a problem. It's interesting because imagine something like that, then you post a video like this, and then you get, you get, I guess you would get an DMCA notice to get it taken down, but then like you could have some legal trouble about it like several years down the line because somebody manually noticed that your video is using something you thought was okay, and you could land yourself probably in some legal trouble. Or at the very least, you could have the video taken down.
I don't know that I've ever heard of YouTube videos turning into some kind of lawsuit in regards to DMCA. Actually, I don't know that that's true. There was, although it wasn't in relation to music, so maybe music is an outlier. But I have heard of a handful of videos being taken down and then turning into a court case because of DMCA, specifically like Sargon versus Aquila
Yeah, Sargon
accused or
versus
whatever.
Aquila. Was it? Did she DMCA the video? She probably
She
did.
did.
Yeah, so because
Yep.
the process is like that. Like you DMCA someone, that someone can counterclaim, and if that someone counterclaims, you have a certain amount of time to go to court, basically on the case.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
the whole process. So it's like in that case was he was arguing that he's transformed the video because he hasn't added he hasn't added his chair in the corner, so we know it wasn't transformative.
Right.
But he's cut the original into like shorter bits to like I think contrast two positions from the start and end, something like that, like shortened it.
Yeah.
And provided a title like SJW levels of awareness, I think it was.
Yes.
And that was deemed sufficiently transformative to actually count.
Yes.
It was, although that case was, I don't think that case was brought because of copyright.
What do you mean?
As in, it seems like, well, you know what? Maybe I'm just being too good faith towards a killer, but.
Lord, what are you doing?
Because if
you fucking spring chicken, you Jesus Christ!
What?
Pure is the fresh-driven snow tord.
What?
Pure is the freshly driven snow. That is you.
Okay. Well, because this is just a choice between two bad outcomes. Because either she's stupid enough to think that his video wasn't transformative, or she's malicious enough to bring the case despite knowing that it was transformative. And I don't know which one is bad faith. Is it worse to call somebody malicious, or is it worse to call him stupid?
Ask that question of Ben Shapiro and get back to me.
Well, I think there's plenty of people you could just apply this label to and ponder which is worse.
Yeah.
Game music copyright. That's because that's kind of an issue I've been thinking about, because I've made videos before with music, and I was never sure. It's like, could I possibly get in trouble for this? Like, not on the level that I'm aware that I'm very unlikely to get in trouble for that. For like getting 10 views on some video, nobody cares about that. But I'm also thinking about this from an ethical perspective, especially because with large corporations, you just usually disregard that. It's like, oh, they are a large corporation, I'm just a dude with 10 subscribers, who cares? But like on principle, and especially when it comes to taking music from smaller creators, it's like I've asked people, I've looked for like at notices. Some people have on the websites or on the like pages. It's like, you can use my music as long as you credit me. Others have like contact me for permission, and others don't have anything. It's like you ask, but then like I'm thinking about, it's like, if I use this without asking and I do credit the person, right? I like place the link. I in the video I put what the song is. Like, is that actually ethical? Because it's definitely
arguably not.
Yeah, that's kind of what I like. On the side of caution, I've erred on just not using anything that I haven't gotten permission from or seen, and notice that you can do it like explicitly from the creator. But it's like, I think this is, it's very easy to get into the argument of harm versus benefit in here, which is probably inappropriate, like judging from the things that I've brought up before. Because like you could say, oh, surely I'm exposing this music to someone who might have not heard of it otherwise, and therefore it's a benefit to the creator of the music. But then, on the other hand, right, you could have...
That sounds like a gay leftist argument, Tord.
It does. It does. Because it's, once again, ends justify the means, and you could then get into the like calculations of hypotheticals, which are completely incalculable. Yeah. Which is like, what did you... Because of your actions, what didn't happen? It's like, well, I don't know. Maybe I could have... Oh man. It gets like, well, you could have paid the person for the rights to use the song, right? But then, in that case, I wouldn't have used the song because I wouldn't have wanted to pay money for that. And therefore, you know, me actually using it and crediting is more than I would have done if I would have not made the video in the first place. And it's just a mess if you... And this is basically why I like end up on the it doesn't matter what the effects are, because you just can't possibly quantify it.
So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly where to land on that, but I do know that I was having a conversation with my sister the other day about something sort of similar. Like, oh, like, you know what? It's actually not worth describing. I was having a conversation with her that was about something sort of similar. And she was giving like a half measure sort of solution. And I'm like, look, if I understand that you are trying to avoid whatever consequences for this thing, and you kind of just want to do, you know, you just want to get away from this person, and not have them in your life anymore. What you are doing is not moral. You owe them more than you're offering them for this thing. That's kind of the same thing. Like, oh, I'm going to do what I feel like and offer a half measure solution towards reparations for this person.
Like, yeah, oh yeah, I've credited, so it's okay, right? Like, yeah, it's effectively effectively paid in exposure.
Yeah,
is the classic.
To some degree that's expected in content creation stuff, though.
Yeah, that's like the linking to the original is the bare minimum, right? Like, if you don't link to, like, what are you doing if you are not even linking to the original?
Yeah. But in the conversation about, you know, accreditation and what have you, part of that is the consent of the negotiation, right?
Yep. So it's like you actually give the person the opportunity to say no, and you owe them that opportunity to say no.
Yes.
Which is so you basically go, yeah. So for it to be ethical, you have to give the person you basically are preserving the freedom of the person that you are taking from. It's like, you know.
Oh man. Oh, using video game music without permission is digital rape. Jesus Christ.
Well, not just video game music, surely. Like, generally.
It's a name, you autist. Jesus. Fuck.
I feel like I've lost the point completely.
No, it's fine. I'm being over dramatic because it's funny. You're welcome.
I'm being overly autistic because I'm overly autistic, not because it's funny. Funny is an accidental side effect of me being massively autistic. I am physically incapable of being humorous on purpose. I only do it by accident, and I have to profusely apologize every time it happens.
That's actually not true. I've found you quite funny a number of times.
Wow. No, you are just cloud chasing, as the argument goes.
Jesus.
On my 40 subscriber YouTube channel. Look at this man trying to buy his way into the big league.
I am a beta orbiter of Torn.
Dude, I can't imagine what happens when I get the 41 subscriber and the second orbiter shows up.
Hey, I want some of that check, homeboy. All 0.00075 cents of it.
Yeah, on the $0 I make off of an unmonetized YouTube channel. I can give you Monopoly money, maybe.
It would be probably more useful.
At least you can play Monopoly with it. That's more than $0, right?
That it is.
Do they sell spare parts for Monopoly? It's like, I'd like one $100 bill, please.
They probably do somewhere. However, I know that I've looked up people like 3D printing the game pieces from stuff like that.
From metal? I know it's not metal, but I just find the mental image of someone like, you know, a 3D printer spilling like a red hot metal onto the pedestal to make a 3D printed like Monopoly piece out of metal.
So there is actually metal 3D printing.
Sure, I don't know if this is true. I've heard that in like China somewhere they are using concrete and stuff to like 3D print entire houses, something like that.
Oh, I've seen that in person in America.
Really?
Yes.
Do you even make houses out of concrete?
In certain circumstances, this was not going to be a house. This was going to be some kind of commercial building.
A dungeon?
Probably. But yeah, metal 3D printing is called sintering.
Interesting. Would that be... Could that be older than plastic? No, surely not. Surely that's not an older technology than plastic 3D printing.
What?
No, because I was thinking... never mind, that's stupid.
Okay.
It was called casting before, not 3D printing.
Correct.
My brain has gone on a tangent that I cannot possibly explain in normal words, so just assume I was insane and move on.
Roger that. Moving on. That being said, this is actually probably a good stopping point for me.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna take a nap in a minute here. I'm kind of tired.
That's fair enough. I'm probably gonna take a nap of the 8-hour variety. Because
yes,
it is midnight, so it is my scheduled nap time. Also known as
right.
going to
BRB.
sleep. Yeah,
BRB gonna go be unconscious now.
Yeah, I'm gonna horizontal myself. I don't know if you can use that as a verb, but you know, who's gonna stop me? Is there a commission on the English language?
Through the power of internet slang.
Yeah, for the power of internet slang, everybody speaks like a massive retard.
Yes.
And
not that they didn't before, but now they also do.
Yeah, now it's not just the content of the argument, but also the form. It's like we've liberated ourselves from the form of formal language to fully embrace the retardedness of internet argumentation. All right. Let's end it here in that case. Thank you very much. It was good discussion. Maybe we should do more of these.
It was.
Perhaps.
I would be down if I have the time.
All right. We'll be in touch. So if anybody's watched this for some reason on the vault, hi. Good night.
Hello.
Well, good nap, I suppose, not good night. Good night for me. All right.